So welcome everyone. Today we're going to be having quite a banter on Are You Okay in the UK? When we publicized this event, the response was overwhelming. It was amazing, not in a positive sense, but it was just really interesting to see how many people fed back um, a response of not quite being okay in the UK. And that's why we need to have this conversation. Some people are okay in the UK, and some people are okay, but not okay. So there are definitely some gaps. And we want to have a banter on what these gaps are. Why are you not okay in the UK? And if you're okay in the UK, what has led to that? Because really, the goal is to not just be okay in the UK, but to actually thrive in the UK. It is possible. I'm not saying it's an easy journey, but it's possible. But we also recognize that this is not our motherland, as it were, um, but we are here. It's one thing for there to be immigration, and it's yet another for there to be integration. They're two different things. So many people have immigrated to the UK. We know the numbers of migrants in the UK, particularly from Nigeria, but not many people have integrated. So I'm going to be sharing my screen and just give a bit of some opening remarks on this. So you're welcome once again. Um, I'll just introduce myself very briefly. I've lived in the UK for 24 years now. A whooping 24 years. I've been here for quite a while. So I've been through quite a lot of seasons from coming here to study. That's what brought me here. I came here for my first degree. I came to study um, all the way through to my PhD from the University of Sussex and getting married, having children, starting my business, and the journey continues. Brains and Banter, which is the platform on which we're having this webinar, was actually established in 2018 because I felt, and rather I saw the need for us to have some intellectual interactions on very topical issues and not just, you know, light street type talk, but really serious conversations, because I truly believe that conversations are a catalyst for change. And hopefully this morning, we're going to be having some serious conversations, also a light banter, and it would actually be a catalyst for change for everyone on this call in some shape or form, no matter how small. So that's a bit about me. I will just move on to the business of the day. So I don't know if we have the poll ready, Adetola. Are we ready to launch the poll? Okay. So if you can please launch the poll, we're going to be asking, are you okay in the UK? Let's just even start and see where we are at with that question. You're on mute.
Okay, just a minute, Ma. I think I'm having some difficulty.
Okay, no problem. I'll go on to sharing my story. And then maybe after the story, we'll try and launch the poll again. So about 8 years ago, I nearly fainted in my kitchen. I was not okay at all. And it was a build-up. I had two children. I didn't realize I was pregnant for my third child at the time. I just remember nearly fainting, but not fainting, thank God. I was probably speaking in tongues or just holding myself together. And I went to sit down and I just thought to myself, what is happening to me? What is going on? Obviously, I didn't know I was pregnant, but it was still very alarming. And I had two young children. My first was 3, my second was 1. My husband was at work. And I just knew I couldn't carry on. To cut a long story short, I had to go to Nigeria, where I had help. And I was in Nigeria for 2 years. I came back to the UK to have my child, and then I went back to Nigeria. I wasn't even going to stay with 3 children and not enough help. Now, when I was in Nigeria, the fact that I had a lot of help made a difference and really helped reset me back, such that when I came back to the UK, I was in a better um, position. But I was also having to face the reality of having three children, having to rebuild my career, as it were, and just sort of make sense of life with very limited help with being a mom. Um, we tried looking for nannies, all sorts. It wasn't just working together. It was quite a difficult time. So honestly, at that time, I was not okay in the UK at all. And I know that there are many mothers with young children who are currently experiencing the same. And for the Black woman in particular, it can be quite a challenge balancing all of that. Really, really very difficult. And that's why we're going to be having some of these conversations. But if you sort of um, track back to my years of studying, it was a completely different story. I was having the time of my life in the UK, but I'll come back to that story later. Aditela, do we have the poll ready or should we just forget about it and move on? Okay, we don't have the poll ready, so I'll just carry on. Whenever we have the poll, just launch it. Now, we're going to have two amazing speakers today who will be talking to us from their areas of experience about being okay in the UK. But by way of an opening remark or opening remarks, I just thought it would be good to have some introduction to what are these measures of being okay, right? Because if we're asking the question, are you okay in the UK? We need to have indicators by which we are measuring okay. And then we will attempt to ascribe some sort of measure to these indicators. So, for example, say your rent or your mortgage, if it exceeds over 35% of your income, then are you okay or you are not okay? So if your mortgage or your rent is less than 35%, then perhaps we can say you are okay. I'm just saying that we would establish some indicators, but then go on to ascribe measures within these indicators. And without much ado, um, there's the saying of money answereth all calls. Really, your economic status in the UK is a vital part. It's a vital indicator of how okay in the UK you are. Not many people can boast of being able to save 20% of their disposable income as savings, but some can. I remember when we would studying economics, 80-20, the 80-20 rule was almost like a rule I lived by in so many ways. The Pareto efficiency rule and 80-20 was just on my radar in so many ways. And I use that as a benchmark, again, as a measure of some sort. So how are you faring economically? What is your earning power like? What opportunities are you able to access? And how much can you command with that access? Bear in mind that, sad to say, sometimes the color of our skin gets in the way. So I know people who work in the big four, and even some of these big four have acknowledged that the people that look like you and I at the top level of management, um, compared to their Caucasian counterparts, are not earning the same. They're doing the same job, but not earning the same. So these are some real economic realities. However, I must say that the Black Lives Matter movement has definitely had an impact because people are speaking up, people are bolder, and people are having some serious conversations and they're confronting issues. I think more people of our kind are even seeking legal help in many shapes and forms. So your economic status really is a measure of how okay are you in the UK. Now, another measure is how integrated are you within your community. Remember, I said it's one thing for immigration to happen, it's another thing for integration to happen. How many friends of a different race do you have? And it's beyond us. It's also as a community. What's our media representation like? How visible are we on adverts that are done? What's our community engagement? How much power are we wielding? How many people of influence do we have? And how are you as a person integrating within your community? Do you volunteer with a hospice, for example, or within your faith community, which is a very vital community? How connected, how engaged are you within the community? I remember when they introduced Life in the UK test, and I had to do the Life in the UK test. And honestly, I had to learn. Thankfully, I like British history. So I knew a lot about British history already, but there were a number of things I did not know. I wasn't at the time. I wasn't really bothered about the anthem, but I had learned it. But there were just so many things. I was like, oh, okay. I had to learn about the UK. A friend of mine whose husband is an oil worker said to me that when they moved to France, they actually the company actually organized an integration sort of course for them and said to them, well, if a French man or woman invites you to their house, then you know you've become family, because the French will rather sit with you in a restaurant. And so they got to understand the French better, so they were enabled to integrate better. There might not be a lot of that happening in a formalized way in the UK, but it's important you seek out that knowledge and you understand the British culture. When you want to learn how to drive, you need to learn the rules of the game. You need to go for a driving test. In fact, you would actually do a theory test first, and then you go for the practical test. And you need to understand the road. It's the same thing with thriving in the UK. You cannot be oblivious to the British system. You cannot be oblivious to the finance system or to the credit system or how to build your credit rating here. One of the things that enabled me to buy my first property at the age of 26 was that I was told to put a formalized way in which my parents were sending me money. That made a world of difference because then I had a track record and I was paying tax on that income. And so I had taxable income that I could use. Had I not known, if I wasn't told, if I did not interact with certain people and share my dreams with people who I was comfortable with, I would not have had that information, and I may not have been able to achieve that at that age. So, how much of the British culture have you really invested in understanding? We are in a different environment. It's a different people. It's a different set of people from whom you might be used to. So, social integration, community integration is key. Then another measure of are you okay in the UK really is are your professional accomplishments here in the UK. I know that the migration um, corridor has different pathways, right? So some people are coming to study, some people are coming as workers, some people are coming as dependents, some people are coming as asylum seekers. People have come from different routes. But I also know that as a people, we are driven people, we are ambitious people. Some have achieved great heights professionally, some have struggled. And many times when you sort of chart this versus with your age, sometimes you start to see some gaps. I remember having a 50-year-old senior friend who said to me that at 50 years old in the UK, she wasn't where her peers in Nigeria, who are 50 years old as well, went to school with her. She knew where they were and she knew where she was. And she wasn't doing badly. But she said to me, she knew that there was a gap. And for me, I thought, oh my word, if at 50, I'm seeing this lady thinking she's doing so well, and she's saying to me, her mates have gone not out of comparison, but just out of a place of sort of reference and checking, right? It was a wake up call for me. Another conversation that I had, again, this is why conversations are important, is I have a sort of a young mentee who is doing so well. She literally took a day off work to graduate. Like she got a job immediately after she graduated. She did so well in her first year in the Big Four. and they said to her that she's done so well, they're going to consider increasing her salary by £10,000 per annum. And initially she said, oh, it sounded huge to her. But then when she did the mathematics per month, that was probably like maybe, I don't know, 600 or something. And this is like before tax. It wasn't, I did tell her, the people in the waiting room, there are 5 people, can we admit them? When she did the breakdown of what it meant per month, she thought, I have bigger financial dreams than this. Really, is this the next level? And again, it was a wake-up call for her. But what milestones are you achieving professionally? And are you tracking this? How visible are you in your professional space? Really, your professional accomplishments in the UK are a measure of okay. But let me add here, if you're a mother, if you're raising children, that is also an accomplishment. Truth be told, even Chimamanda Adichie did say recently that she could have written 2 books in the time that she had to spend raising her child. So there is a cost to it, but it is worth it. It is definitely worth it, and it is an accomplishment. If there's any mother on the call who is thinking, all these professional accomplishments, no, please do not worry. It is just simply one measure of how okay in the UK are you. Having said that, even whilst you're raising your children, I always advise, do not lose your voice. Do not go into some quiet hole. Please, please. Another measure really is your mental health. Can we have that conversation? Your mental health is very important. If you're irritable, and sometimes financial instability does lead to this, then you know that you might not be okay. We've had sad cases of people whose dependents have come to the UK and have passed on. So serious issues are happening. People's physical health has been affected, right? So there are conversations to be held. At the same time, some people are doing really well. They are doing very well. So I'll go on to my second story and then I'll wrap up with networks, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. About 20 years ago, when I was studying, honestly, I'm not sure I've gotten back to those days, but I'm trying. I was single, no care in the world. Honest, I was balling. But my university years in the UK, probably some of my best years, an amazing, amazing time. I happened to finish my master's degree at the age of 19. And so I got some media representation as being one of the top 30 future Black leaders in the country at the time. And that really was like a crowning of my thriving years in the UK. Totally possible. So if you're studying here and you're making the most of your time as a student, there's some amazing things that you can do. Dr. Desola, who will be speaking to us, worked with the World Bank. He came here, has finished his PhD, he's lecturing, he is thriving in his own way, and he'll be sharing his story, I'm sure. So it is possible to thrive in the UK. But something happened recently, and I thought when we get to the banter section, I would like us to have that conversation. So I'm an educational consultant, I'm in the business of education. I enjoy education. And I found that a number of our clients were asking for really top schools in the UK. And I thought, okay, let's backtrack a bit. How many people of influence that look like me have come out of Eton? Right now, by the way, Winchester is the popular school because Rishi Sunak went to Winchester and he's a person of color. And yes, he's British, but he's also a person of color. So I thought, okay, how many people that look like my children left from Eton? If you check famous Black alumni from Eton, the first person you will see is Dilibe Onyema. And he had quite a harrowing experience, sadly. I then later discovered that they were coming out as poets, as writers, fantastic professions. But I'm like, where were the political leaders? Where were the business game changers? What's happened there? Their parents have spent so much. Dilibe, by the way, was the first Black person to graduate from Eton in 1969. But he wasn't the first to get enrolled in Eton It was a Tokumbo Akintola that was the first to get enrolled, but sadly passed on, so he didn't finish from Eton. But the point was, I wasn't really seeing them where their counterparts, I mean, Eton is training Britain's next leaders, right? And Harrows, the Harrows of this world, the Westminsters, they were not in those same places. And I started asking myself questions. What pathway am I preparing for my children beyond these great schools that they have gone to, so that they can enjoy the same kind of media representation I enjoyed 20 years ago that really made a difference? Finally, in terms of measuring how okay in the UK are you, what are your networks like? How strong are your networks? This applies anywhere in the world. And the truth is, anywhere in the world, irrespective of being in the UK, you have to work your network. You have to work your network. I would always share this story of a friend of mine who said to me, she made in COVID, she made 20 million naira from her address book because she sat down one day, came up with a strategy, and was just going through her contacts. And literally her address book became her checkbook, and she cashed out from it. She worked her network essentially. When you are in the UK, you cannot be in a silo. If you do not have any community to join, please join the Brains and Banter community. We will be so happy to have you within the community. I was still chatting with someone today who basically said to me, she has a 2-year-old child. She's been trying to get a job. She's gone for interviews. It's not been successful. And I said to her, please send me your CV and we'll see what we can do. You need to be part of a network. As I said earlier, your faith networks are the faith network is particularly an important one. I know some have been scarred from that. And when I say faith network, not necessarily your church or the mosque or the faith assembly that you attend. It can be people of like minds. It can be a ministry that you're a part of. But your networks and the strength of your network is actually quite an indicator of how okay in the UK that you are. Wow, I think you've heard enough from me. And now I'm going to hand over to Dr. Desola, but I will just introduce him. And please, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, please do share in the chat box. Okay, let me stop share. So Dr. Desola Simoni is a lecturer in economics at the University of Reading. He's also a consultant for development economics in the office of the Vice Presidency at the World Bank. He obtained his PhD in economics from the University of Reading in the UK, his master's degree in economics from the University of Surrey, and his bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Lagos, Nigeria. He has an interest in teaching, and he has taken roles at the University College London and Queen Mary University, London. Aside economics, Dr. Desola Simoni, or Dr. Deso, as I would now fondly be calling him, enjoys spending time with family, friends, watching football, and playing video games. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Desola Simoni. You can give some emoji claps.
Okay. Where is this? Thank you for that kind introduction, Alo. Just let me take a minute to share my slides, please. Can everyone see my slides?
Yeah.
Lovely. So thank you, Alo. As you mentioned, I'm Adesola. I'm a lecturer. So my presentation is going to be slightly different from Alo's one. It's going to have a slight academic twist to it because my whole PhD was on migration, and the work I do with the World Bank is also around migration. So I'm in the business of studying migration, but also advising governments, right? So on that side, I have some things to say, but in terms of on the personal bit, I'll just give a little bit of my own personal experience and experiences of people around me, and then we can banter about that. So my talk today will be structured in 5 main ways. First, I'll give some background to migration statistics in the UK. Then I'll look at the push and pull factors, the push and pull drivers of migration. Again, both the first 2 points are mainly academic, not academic, just statistics really. Then pre-arrival planning, or what I call before you japa. So my own talk is kind of geared towards people who have recently arrived in the UK, or people who are planning to arrive in the UK very soon. Then once you japa, also post-arrival, and then my outlook, what I think about what migration is going to look like in the UK. Okay, let's go. So when we talk about migration, right, we need to think about it in two main ways. Migration, first of all, is a very, very controversial topic anywhere in the world, particularly in high-income countries who receive a lot of migrants. It's highly debated, and there's this barriers versus bridges argument. Barriers meaning raising walls, essentially preventing migration through policies and etc. Or bridges means as the name implies, making bridges, facilitating migration, right? So there's usually this big debates in different countries. If you look at parliament when they're debating migration, it is super heated. So just wanted to give that context. The next, talking about, oh, come on, I see a typo here. Talking about migration, like Alo has mentioned, there are different types of migration. I would focus on 3. Number 1, we have economic migration, which is, moving for school, moving for work, etc. So that's typical economic migration. Then we have forced displacement. When you have forced displacement, think about the guys who are living in Gaza, right? Think about Ukraine when Russia invaded. Think about Sudan, right? Think about Syria, think about Venezuela. So those are forced displacements, usually by conflict, some also by climate, right? Think about Bangladesh or Pakistan, where they have, these monsoons that flood houses, that people are forced to leave their houses because of these climate events. Then irregular migration, this one makes the news all the time. Irregular migration, think about the guys that stow away on the boats going to France, or the guys that go on boats going that go on boats through the Mediterranean to Italy or to Spain, right? So, or the guys from Mexico who climb the walls to get into the US, or who stay inside trucks and are transported with goods from Mexico into the US. So those are the regular migrants, and they make the news all the time because it's so sensational. And for host countries, which are high-income countries, typically, this irregular migration gives them a sense of loss of control of their borders. And so because of this kind of immigrants, they kind of respond strongly, right? But we're not talking about that today. So migration does have a lot of benefits to host countries. Everyone knows that. But because of some type of migrants, and also because migration has some costs, it is super debated. So the migration has benefits in terms of the skills that the migrants bring, in terms of contributing to taxes. And because migrants, they work, they contribute to tax, they pay national insurance, but they also have costs. And these are the kind of things that facilitate the debate. For example, some people think migrants increase the house of prices, the prices of houses, because now there are more people, the supply don't increase quite quickly, and so because of there's more supply of people, house prices increase. There's also cost in terms of services. Education, schools are free, so with more people, they kind of stretch the education system, health, social services. So those are some of the arguments that these people make around migration. So just to give you some more context, as of 2021, there were 270,000 Nigerians living in England and Wales. This is according to the UK Home Office. Again, some more statistics. What? Okay, so some more statistics again. I don't know if you can see my screen. So this, I can see there's a spike in 2022. This is when the japa really happened. This is the visa applications for the UK from Nigerians. So you can see it was kind of flat, and then after COVID, it started increasing, and then 2022, there was a sharp increase. And this is part of why we are seeing a change in UK migration policy partly because of this. So you can see around almost 60K people applied for tier 4. This is just tier 4 student visas, right? And this is from the UK Home Office. And then some people also, Nigerians also come for work. You can see also 2022, 2023, and this is as at September 2023. You also see quite a spike, mostly for healthcare, health and social care work. These are for Nigerians, by the way, only Nigerians. This is the skilled visa applications for Nigerians. You can see the spike in 2022 and 2023. Then I put this slide here. They don't come alone. This is the story about dependents. You can see in 2022, see that green bit? That is Nigerians, right? Bringing around 60K dependents, right? And then Indians, and then all others. So these are the reasons why, we see such a strong reaction from the UK government, right? Now, where do these guys work? Where do Nigerians work? Again, this is all for Nigerians. Where do Nigerians work? I plotted a simple graph, clustered bar chart from 2021 to 2023. You see this long green bar, health and social work. There is some financial services, there's some education, there is some arts and entertainment, but the bulk of it is health, particularly social care work. So now let's talk about why do people japa. Well, in economics, there are two broad reasons why people migrate, right? There are the push reasons. These are factors that are literally pushing the migrants from their origin countries. On the other hand, these are the attraction, right, from the destination countries. So in terms of push, I probably divided this into two factors. Number one is economic factors, right? If you ask the people who migrated recently in the past 2-3 years, why did you leave Nigeria? Whatever they tell you, you can find it here. Well, no job, inflation is bad, the exchange rate is weak. Those are some economic reasons. In terms of non-economic reasons, they'll tell you that the insecurity, you cannot travel from, let's say, from Lagos to Abuja by road, someone's going to kidnap you, they're going to ask for ransom, those kind of things. Also, healthcare. They'll say, even if you are rich in Nigeria, you're just one shock away from one accident before you can get an ambulance to take you to the hospital, things like that. And then one final reason, which I think is, I call it social pressures or keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, my friend, we finished secondary school together. He has relocated to Canada, or he has relocated to the UK. So I must relocate to the UK as well. Right? So those are some of the push factors. There are many others, but you can summarize them into these chunks. In terms of the pull factors, one of the major one, I think, is the relaxation of the migration policy. Post-Brexit, a lot of Europeans, non-UK Europeans left the UK because really there was no point for them. And so what happened was the UK now tried to relax its immigration policy to attract talent, non-EU talent. And so that is when they brought in this graduate visa thing, which, after your studies, you can get a job without sponsorship. Then they also brought in this skills shortage lists where, they were trying to recruit teachers from abroad, particularly teachers for STEM subjects like mathematics, for example. They were also trying to get health and social care workers, so that was one of the main reasons. Even universities were discounting their tuition. I remember University of Hull, particularly, it was like promo, bonanza, come and pay £9,000 and come and do your masters, So that was part of it. Number two is just the the rest can be summarized into, better life. Just a better life. You get better pay for your skills, better social benefits, better services in terms of education and healthcare. In terms of non-economic pull factors, we have amenities like internet, fast, stable, affordable internet. For me, I remember coming for my master's and just being able to watch a video on YouTube without it loading. I'm like, wow. So this kind of life exists. Also things like rights and freedom, law and order. And one reason also why a lot of people pull factor could also be culture or language or even colonial past. There's a reason why a lot of Nigerians want to come to the UK. There's this historical aspect of it, the colonial aspect of it, but also the fact that the language is English. I mean, we also have migrants in other countries, but most migrants from Nigeria typically go to English-speaking countries because of the proximity of language and culture. So that's done with the academic bits. So now, before you Jakwa, these are the pre-arrival things you need to think about. I call this count the costs. Count the cost. And this has led a lot of people into unfortunate events, counting the costs. So in terms of counting the costs, I'm a Christian. The Bible says, something about how you went back on a project without first counting the costs. By counting the cost, I mean, do your research. Do your research. Talk to people. Don't talk to one person. Talk to a lot of people and just compare their own experiences, because different people have different experiences, right? Count the cost. Number one, what type of school do you want to go? Right? What type of school do you want to go? Is it Russell Group? Is it non-Russell Group? Taking into account the fact that just like in Nigeria, how employers kind of have biases for different types of universities, here as well, employers have biases for different types of universities. For example, an employer would always favor someone that went to Oxford, for example, over somebody that went to, let's say, King's or Sussex. No offense, Alo. That. So count the cost. Number two, what are you studying? There are some subjects that essentially they have very little value, very little labor market value. For example, I wrote a paper recently about people who study arts and humanities. They consistently perform worse on the job market compared to people who studied other subjects. So if you study history, for example, or English, for example, they perform worse in terms of they are usually overqualified for the jobs that they eventually get. They're usually paid significantly less. They are more likely to work part-time, right? So what are you studying? In terms of counting the costs, I put an average of tuition fees for non-Russell Group universities around 15K. I think it's actually more than that. Also, plan your living expenses. We find a lot of people think, oh, once I just come to the UK, I'll work 20 hours and I'm able to pay the school fees. It's not going to work. You cannot work enough to pay your school fees. If that happens, if you're able to do that, that means your living expenses. But also that means your education is going to suffer. Because if you are working a lot, that means you're not going to school, you're not attending lectures, that means your education is going to suffer. In terms of counting the costs also, think about what kind of jobs can you do after your degree. So you need to also think about that, what kind of jobs can I get? What kind of salary can I earn? We all know that migration is costly. It is costly in terms of the initial upfront costs, in terms of applying for visas, in terms of the amount you need to show in your account, in terms of buying your tickets. It is costly. So count all these costs. Finally, is it worth it? Just because my cousin, my friend is doing it, doesn't mean you should also do it, right? Is it worth it? Alo mentioned the story about, someone she knows who is 50 years old, who is doing okay or is doing well, but compared to her contemporaries in Nigeria, she sees a gap. So is it worth it? I think that's an important question. you need to ask yourself, is it worth it? What is happening now, and I'll talk about this in my recommendations or my outlook, is that there has been so much brain drain in Nigeria now that now there are a lot of jobs in Nigeria for high-skilled jobs with like a salary premium, right? So now it's even, in my view, it's even a little more attractive to go back to Nigeria after your degree, because now there are all these jobs that people have jackpot from, and they're looking for somebody with your skills or with your experiences that can do them at a premium. Because now you can say, okay, if you cannot pay me this, I'm just going to stay in the UK or something like that. In terms of counting the cost, also think about your post-study visa application, right? So many people come to the UK with the idea of, I'll get a job that will sponsor my visa. That's a fair assumption. But I need to give you some points to consider. Number one, from the employer's point of view, it is extremely costly to sponsor even just one person. It costs at least £5,000 to sponsor just one person. Now, this is a person that is untested. We don't know what you are capable of. We don't know if you can actually do the job. We don't have the time or the resources to train you on the job. And there are probably many other British people who can do the same job, except you are highly skilled, right? Except you are highly skilled. So the likelihood that you might be sponsored after your degree, except you went to one of these extremely good schools like maybe LSE or Oxford or Cambridge, is not very high. And that's just me telling you the truth. So most likely you're going to have to apply for your post-study visa. Can you afford it? I've heard so many stories of somebody coming with 5 children. Husband came with 5 children to do masters. Now the masters are finished. How are you going to get what, £15,000 to pay for your post-study visa? And this creates a new set of problems, which we are going to discuss later. So my key message here is, before you japa, count the cost. Count the cost. Count the cost. Talk to people. If you don't know anybody, go on LinkedIn. The university you want to go, there'll probably be somebody who is there, a Nigerian who is there at the moment. Reach out to them. Most times they would reply you. I've had so many people reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Oh, I see you at University already. Oh, I'm coming here, blah, 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 blah. And then we chat. So count the cost. This is super important. And just to give you some context, so I saw this is from Financial Times recently, and it's just showing wages, like salaries, trends in salaries across time between the UK and the US. So for people who do not have any degree, who did not finish high school, you see the trends between the UK and the US, very similar, no huge difference. For people who finished high school but did not go to university, again, the trends are very similar, no difference over time. This is from like late 1990s to like 2022. For people who have some college degree, maybe they dropped out or they don't have any bachelor's degree, look at the trends, very similar. But then look at those that have bachelor's degree and above. You can see this huge gap, right, in their salaries, which shows that, and you can see the trend in the UK, it's trending downwards, and then it was flat, right? And one of the reasons for this is, I can give 2 reasons. Number 1 reason is oversupply of skilled workers in the UK. Oversupply, essentially, we have too many people who have degrees in the UK, who have bachelor's degrees and above in the UK. That is one. Number 2, the UK economy is not doing well enough to provide jobs for these people. So the economy, 1, there's an oversupply, both from natives and the immigrants of skilled workers. But 2, the economy is not expanding enough to create this kind of jobs to create high-skilled jobs that would absorb this supply. And so we see the wage trend downwards. Meanwhile, in the US, the economy is growing robustly, and we are seeing jobs for this supply. And so that's why you can see this huge gap between wages in the UK and in the US. So I just thought, to give you that context again, this is from Financial Times. It was published in, I think, October 2023. You can just have a look at that. Just to give you, again, more context. So once you get here, a few points, again, this is just from my personal experience, a few points you need to note. Number one, there's typically an overeducation of immigrants compared to natives. So you find out you are doing a job, you have a master's, your colleague or even your line manager has just a bachelor's degree. And you're like, come on, man. So there's usually an overeducation of immigrants, right? And you would find also, if you're looking for a job, that there's also like a premium on UK experience. We say, oh, but I've been a marketing manager for 10 years in Nigeria, but do you have UK experience? So you find that they kind of discount your Nigerian experience. This is just the reality, right? I'm not making anything up. This is what happens, right? In economics, we say this is positive economics. It is what it is, right? So you find that out. But I also wanted to point out here that usually what happens is over time, this overeducation, it reduces over time, right? The longer you stay here, the more your qualification and experience is suited for the job that you have. So the point I'm trying to make here is the benefits to JAPA many times does not materialize immediately. It materializes over time. The next point I wanted to make is, you need to learn the workplace culture is very, very different from what you have in Nigeria. There's something called small talk. Small talk, you need to learn how to do it. I did not like small talk. Before, initially when I just got here, I used to find it extremely irritating. But now, I'm a genius at small talk. And I'll just give some examples of stuff you can talk about. Number one thing I can never fail, I don't know, is the weather. The weather. Oh, it's so sunny today. They will go on like 5 minutes telling you about the weather. Number two, if you have colleagues, you meet them on Monday, how was your weekend? They will tell you how they went to their grandma's house. They will tell you everything they did on the weekend. On Friday night, before you go off, what do you have planned for the weekend? That small talk is super important. That is how you build rapport. So that's number two, is going for office socials. Here in the UK, it's such a huge thing. After work, sometimes they go to the pub. That is where some of these huge decisions are being made, right? And the same way nepotism, favoritism and nepotism works in Nigeria, also works here. If they just like you, you get those jobs, you get the promotion just because they like you. And some of the ways you can get them to like you is by going to all these social events, Christmas party, this summer party. Just do it. Find a way to go. Number 3, point 3 or point 4 is we have Nigerian lexicon we need to drop if you want to be global. This is not even about the UK. If you want to be just a global person, things like as in, she, she. For me, it took a long time to drop this from my lexicon. But I think if you can, I think you should. It kind of helps with integration. Alo mentioned about integration. It helps with integration. Next point is in terms of discrimination. You may be discriminated against. It has nothing to do with you. You've not done anything, but it's just some of these people's deep held beliefs and their stereotypes. And you can help change that, right? You can help change that. When I have the opportunity, I'm talking to some new Caucasians, and they try to stereotype me. I just tell them, dude, I work at this uni, I work here. You can see their face, they are blown away. And you can see them also update their priors. They also change their mind that, okay, they also kind of adjust their stereotypes. Also, I remember the very first day I stepped in University College London to teach a class on mathematical economics. I was in a class of like 50 students, all Caucasians. And from the get-go, you could see from the look on their faces that, dude, do you even know what you're talking about? Can you teach me? You could see that this was literally my first class. Some of them will even ask you questions quite aggressively or in a condescending manner. But over time, I was able to understand, okay, this is exactly what is going on. And I was able to change their mind and earn their respect. Not like I wanted to earn their respect because I'm standing in front of you for a reason. We are not mates, right? But I was able to change their mind and earn their respect. So you might have this happen to you. It's just part of the game. Over time, it decreases. Over time, you become indifferent to it. Over time, like I mentioned again, the gains to migration typically they materialize over time. Unfortunately, the costs to you, personal costs in terms of financial costs, emotional costs, you pay them immediately, but the benefits materialize over time. Final point here is network aggressively. Network aggressively, both online and in person. Use LinkedIn to do this networking in person. Talk to people. This brings me to my next point here. Be friendly, make friends. Alo has mentioned this. Find your support structure. It is super important. Your support structure is super important because it's super different here. The culture is very, very different here. So find your support culture, whether it's in church, in mosque, friends, co-workers. Volunteer is super important so that you can find people of like minds. Not everybody can be your friend. I have probably 2 friends in Reddit, right? So not everyone can be your friend. Well, I have a lot of acquaintances. So find your people. Number 3 is, again, small talk. I've mentioned this. It is super important. Small talk. Number 4, I want to say is write down your goals. Actually, the Bible says write the vision, make it plain. So he might run that reads it or something along those lines. Why? Because what happens here is once you come here, when people migrate here, they update their priors. Oh, I don't have to work so hard to earn a living, or I don't have to struggle as much. I don't have to have CFE and MSc and ACC and ICANN, and so they kind of, I use the word settle, because Nigerians are usually super ambitious. And many times I see this happen a lot of times when they get here, they kind of lose their ambition and they become comfortable. So my own advice here is write down your goals. Also, if you're an ambitious person, in your support structure, look for people who are also ambitious. People who are not scared by your ambition. People whose ambition also fire your own ambition. And I'll give you a story, my own personal story. When I started my master's at University of Surrey, I had this friend from Nigeria. When I first met him, I didn't like him. Guy was too loud. But as we began talking, this guy told me, okay, he wants to make a distinction, finish a master's with a distinction. I'm like, what did you finish with in your undergrad? He said 2-2. Which university did you go with? One private university. Oh, make 2-2. But you want to jump to distinction? Come on. But this guy was very, very serious about it. At the point, I'm like, oh, this guy is very serious. So he just like make the distinction. So we became very good friends. We both made distinctions. Then in the masters, we said, okay, we want to study. We both wanted to work at the World Bank. And then one day, a lecturer, someone from the World Bank came to my university on secondment. And we just went to meet him. Dude, we want to work at the World Bank. He said, go and do a PhD. Okay. And that just made both of us, okay, we need to do a PhD. This June, both of us graduated with our PhDs. I'm proud to announce to you that the guy he lives in Washington, D.C. now. He works at the World Bank. I do some consulting for the World Bank, but I'm still in academia. So that guy, for me, it was my support structure. He was my own best man for my wedding. I was his best man for his own wedding. He's my G. So people like that, right? So write down your goals. Next point is, so Alo mentioned about work-life balance. It is very easy to become overwhelmed here. I get overwhelmed a lot of times, but I also find a way to blow steam. So find something that works for you. I usually go to swim around 3 times every week, or I go to the gym, or I learned something new. During the pandemic, I learned how to cook. Now, there is no cuisine that I cannot cook. That was my own hobby, and I really, really enjoyed it. And my wife, she's a taster. Delicious. You know, so learn something new. And one final point I'll leave here with before I move to the recommendations. I know time is fast spent. One thing is here, everything is online, right? People come to ask me, do I have any information about jobs? Dude, is online. Everything here is online. Just search online. In terms of online, clean up your LinkedIn page, because if you send a request to people, one of the first things they'll do, they look at your page. Is this somebody that I want to be associated with? Clean up your LinkedIn page. Apply for jobs. Not 1 or 2 applications. Apply. I'll give you a story. In academia, if you want to get a job as a tenure track professor, you need to put in around 400 applications. 400. In my recent round of applications, I applied for 13 jobs to get 1 interview. 30 to get 1 interview. And this is my half PhD. Now, you just finished your master's from University of Ajan Lekoko. No disrespect to anyone's university. You made a 2-1. You will be applying for 1 job per day. How do you want to see job? How? So apply. In addition, use LinkedIn. Talk to careers in your university to help you, prepare your CV, your cover letters, practice interviews. They do that. That's what they're paid for. So use it. Me and my friends used to say, no change. As I've paid for this master, there's no change. So every single thing that we can take from the university, we take it. Finally, set up job alerts for jobs. If you're applying for jobs, set up job alerts on LinkedIn, on Indeed, Google. Set up job alerts. So once they post this job, you get the alert, you apply for it immediately. So final points, and then I would hand over back to Alo. 3 things I want to leave you with in terms of outlook. I see a lot of return migration back to Nigeria, what I call Japada, right? One, because the UK is not producing enough jobs for its graduates, right? The UK is not producing enough jobs. That is one reason. But also in Nigeria now, there's huge demand for skilled jobs. I've had a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. Oh, they want me to come back to Nigeria to come and work. When I ask them, how much are you offering? I'm like, no. If I was in Nigeria, this would have been a fantastic offer, but my mouth don't tear. So you need to give me the right price to bring me back to Nigeria. Secondly, we are seeing the UK immigration policy become super restrictive, right? And let me just point this out. Just because it's coming from the UK government doesn't mean they've thought it through or it makes sense. Many of it doesn't make sense, and they are still trying to figure it out. But because elections are coming next year and they're trying to appease the electorates, they are trying to, again, I call this an own goal, right? Because these highly skilled migrants, they are globally mobile and they'll go where they are welcome. So I think because of the UK policy is becoming more restrictive, less and less Nigerians are going to come here. And finally, still because of this restriction, other locations will become more and more attractive. The US, the UK, Australia. You'll be surprised how many Nigerians are in Australia, New Zealand. So those places will become more and more attractive because of how restrictive the UK policy has been or is being. And on that note, I'll end my talk. Thank you so much, Alu, for having me. And yes, I'm happy to answer any questions during the banter session.
Wow.